For historical context and more information, see the description below.
The first chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes makes life look like a rather monotonous venture. A generation goes and a generation comes. The wind blows to the south and then it goes round to the north. All things are full of weariness. He says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. Now, I think most of us would agree that this seems to be an exaggeration, that the writer has gone just a little too far. Everything isn't the same from one day to another and from 1 year to another. As a matter of fact, no two creations, animal, vegetable, or mineral, are completely alike, and things don't stay as they are. The magazine Think had an article in it a short time ago which said that the calamity of modern existence is that the world changes so fast that there is little likelihood that old people will continue to remain very much wiser than the young. That's humbling, isn't it? Probably there never was a great differential, but the writer is saying that the differential is going to become more narrow with the passing of the years. That today it is distressing to note how few young Americans there are who can identify one older American whom they deeply admire. And that's a tragic thing. Chief Justice Warren has pointed out that we have come to the place where a generation is compressed into about 5 years. We used to think of a generation as being about 30 years. The Chief Justice is saying that it's at the place where every 5 years there's a credibility gap. That means that the child that we baptized this morning is in a different generation from the child who's going into first grade. Time marches on. But in a strict sense of the word, that which hath been is not what shall be. We're constantly being faced with new situations. It's not so very long ago that we felt we had a relative safety here in the United States as we sat behind our two oceans. But it's no longer as it was. From here on, man's future is going to be threatened with a thermonuclear war. There will never be another generation that can grow up without the fear of it. Things do not remain just as they are. When Columbus set out to discover America in 1492, it said that he had to sail his ships 13 yards farther than he would have had to sail them today. But if he had started his voyage 180 million years ago, he could have gone from Spain to Newfoundland in hip boots. Things aren't as they were. And yet there is a sameness about life. When we've talked all around the matter, we have to come back to it. There is a sameness about life. At least there's a rough pattern in it. I used to visit an old lady in my former church who was just a great person, tremendous philosopher. When I was stuck on what I was going to preach about on Sunday, occasionally I'd drop in and just have conversation with her, and she would throw out a seed that developed into a sermon. She was in her 90s. She seemed to have schooled herself against letting life ever take her by surprise. If one made the comment that we had had a rather warm fall, but there was cold weather ahead, her reply invariably was, one must expect that. And when she talked about her ailments, and she did have a few, she would always conclude by saying, but at my age, one must expect that. Nothing took her by surprise. Whether or not this was one of the secrets of her longevity, she certainly lived to be a very old woman and a very wise one. And as we start 1969, I wonder if we wouldn't do well to try to cushion ourselves against its shocks. If we were to recognize in the beginning that there are some things we just must expect. We're going to have trouble. We're going to have disappointment. We're going to have frustration. We're going to have sorrow. I'm not morbid enough to think that the whole year is going to be made up of that. I've never forgotten the story about the man who was meeting his friend for breakfast at 7 o'clock one Monday morning. And when his friend saw him, he said, "Joe, how are you feeling?" Joe replied, "It's 7 o'clock Monday morning, and I've already had a lousy week." I'm not suggesting that we've gone through almost 5 days of 1969 and we've already had a lousy year. Nor am I suggesting that the whole thing's going to be a horrible ordeal. But I am suggesting that we're going to have our share of trouble. And I have no formula for escaping it. God didn't place us in a world where we escape things, that is, constructively. He placed us in a world where we conquer things. But I have no formula for the escape. George Eliot had one of his characters say, because he tried to slip away from everything that was unpleasant and cared for nothing else as much as his own safety, he came at last to commit some of the basest deeds, such as make men infamous. He denied his father and left him to misery. He betrayed every trust that was reposed in him, that he might keep himself safe and rich and prosperous. And it concludes with the words, yet calamity overtook him. Well, it is a way of doing just that. And expecting that it's going to come to us in some form of other, we would be of all people most foolish if we didn't try to make some preparation for the meeting of that which we expect. I believe that we should go over into the new year carrying the memory of some of the good things. And we should try to forget those that are wounds. There were some good things in the past year. I don't care what we've come through, what we have experienced. There were some good things in the past year. And we would do well to think back on them. The fact is that knowledge of and continuity with the past are very important. And we should bring from the fires of the past its sparks, and not the ashes. Maybe this is the difference between the optimist and the pessimist. The pessimist comes over into the new year still carrying all the white and the worn out ashes, but the optimist is a spark with which he's going to light another fire. And I believe we prepare for what we're going to expect to if we recognize that we're very insufficient people. We lack so much. We need friends, don't we? We need friends so very, very much. And I suppose one of the tragedies that a minister notices as he goes from year to year is that there are far too many people who are intent on collecting money rather than collecting friends. And then they come to that place where money isn't much use anymore, or they have far more than they can use, and they have none with which to enjoy. There's one woman in this congregation that I suppose would be considered one of the older generation. That's as far as I'll ever go in guessing woman's age. She says that every time she loses a friend, she makes another one. And she is hosts of friends. By herself, she just doesn't want to face that which she expects. I'm going into the new year, too, realizing that I need the church. I need the church pointing me to God. That when life gets drab and life gets listless and life gets difficult to handle, that there's something about the church that makes me lift my eyes higher. And it reminds me again of the significance of faith. Probably I can learn something too from what the church says Sunday after Sunday through its scriptures and through its hymns and through its anthems on the matter of sharing. And perchance some of the burdens, some of the loads that are going to come in 1969 will not seem quite so heavy if I can stop thinking so much about my own and think a little bit more about the burdens that other people are bearing. I think I need something done about my faith. I think all of us do. Because one of the most disappointing things that comes into a minister's life is after he has been preaching for years and years to a congregation, and then to have somebody come up against sorrow and to behave as if he had never heard a sermon in his life nor had never read the gospel. There are hard questions. How can a good God permit suffering? Is this really our Father's world, with its wars and its rumors of wars? What kind of help can I expect from God? These and so many more questions, they need to be dealt with. And I imagine that we're going to need some help not only on the big problems that have to do with our faith, but some of the little things that continually pester us. That we can begin to say with Paul, if whatsoever things are true, honest, good, lovely, we should think on these things. But the time for preparation is at hand. That's not morbidity. The time for preparation is at hand because we know not the day nor the hour. This is just fact. One young man wanted to work on the farm. The farmer asked him if he could drive a tractor, and his answer was no. He asked him if he could run a milking machine, and his answer was no. He asked him if he could sow a field of grain, and his answer was no. And the farmer said, "What can you do?" The man said, "I can sleep when the wind blows." Didn't seem like much of a recommendation, but he was hired. And in a short time there was a storm in the middle of the night. And the farmer got up and he wondered where his man was. And he went out to the stables and he found that all the doors were closed. And he found that the animals were in the stable. And there even was a covering over the top of the straw stacks. And then he remembered the words of the man. I can sleep when the wind blows. I've thatched my roof, you see, in good weather. I've made my preparation. The winds are going to blow. They're going to blow by night and they're going to blow by day. One must expect that. But as we pointed out briefly last Sunday morning, we should also expect that some great things are going to happen. Some years ago, James Ullman wrote a book called White Towers. And he had one of the characters say, there's a world at war and there's also a world at peace. There's the miracle of the 6-ton bomb, and there's also the miracle of the snowflake. Ah, yes, he said, there's still enough of the good, the true, the beautiful left in the world, if one has but the wit to find them. That's the key, you see. If one has but the wit to find them. Isn't it true? And it's a great thing to go into the new year expecting them. Why, they're even in such commonplace things as the hills that point to God from whence cometh our help. And it's great now and then just to sing that lovely old hymn that this is my Father's world, the birds their carols raise. The morning light, the lily white declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world, it shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. The good, the true, and the beautiful. So easy to miss it, isn't it? There are people who come to church and they listen to the prayers rather than participate in prayer. They listen to the hymns, they listen to the anthems, they listen to the scripture being read, and they go out saying nothing happened. I wonder, can it be because they have attended church so little that they're unprepared to receive what might have been offered to them? Is it possible for a spirit in tune with the infinite in even a minor way to walk into a church and not to feel what Isaiah did? Holy, 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 the whole earth is full of his glory. Is it possible? That's what the prophets saw, and there's something in it for all of us. Some pick up the Bible and they say, I don't understand it. Or I stopped reading it years ago. Or God help them, some of them say that we got so much Sunday school when we were youngsters that we're not reading anymore. Well, I imagine that they drank a lot of water and they ate a good deal of bread when they were youngsters, and yet they didn't stop when they got older. Can it be that they've come to the place, so far as the scriptures are concerned, where they're not on talking terms with it, they're not on listening terms with it? And of course, nothing happened. Yes, there's a fortune out there to be shared. And the encouragement is that we may have it if we have the wit to find it. There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted all the voyages of their life, is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it comes, or lose our ventures. And so in this year ahead, we must expect the bad, and we should expect the good. And probably above all, we should expect the unexpected. Because that's going to happen too. Alan Walker points out that it's something the same as these signs that you see along the highway. Deer crossing. We can control the traffic. We can keep them from making U-turns on the highway. But we can't control the deer unless we put fences the whole distance along. The deer is the unpredictable factor. And God has placed us in a world where the unpredictable, where the unexpected happens. It happened to little Zacchaeus as he was up in the tree. And it's happened to the prophets. It happened in the birth of Christ. Who would have thought that Jesus Christ would not be born in some great central place like Jerusalem, or to teach them a lesson in Babylon? But no. Born in a tiny spot called Bethlehem, so that one wrote, "O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie, above the deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by." Even religion, God won't allow to get into a rut. Do you realize that? Oh, we may think we've arrived, and we may think that we have come to what is a satisfactory conclusion about God and Christ and the Holy Spirit for the rest of our lives, but it just won't happen that way. Just when we think we have it in our hands and when we can put it into our pockets and keep it there, it bursts out. God won't let us get into a rut in anything. And I think one of the causes for some of the people who come to me to discuss the matter of getting a divorce is that they have told each other that they love each other in the old mechanical way, in just the same way for so many years that it means nothing. You can't leave anything very long in a rut in this world. We can talk as we like about logic and what's rational. But the great hope of this world is not its logic. The great hope of this world is that the unexpected can happen. The great hope of this world is that God can reach down and do something to this world when we least expect it. Follow logically what we see at the first of 1969, and you lead this world to hell. Our only hope is this unexpected fact. It was in another place that Ecclesiastes said, "There's a time to be born and a time to die. The time to plant and the time to pluck up that which is planted. The time to break down and the time to build up. The time to weep and the time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to keep silent and a time to speak." But isn't it true that all of these things come together and they're blended in God? I remember A.B. Davidson writing that the prophets were terribly one-idea'd people. And that idea was always that God was going to do something. That's a great thought to carry into 1969. And I'm going to leave it with you. God is going to do something. And for a good new year, we must expect that. Amen.
This morning's worship service emanated from Shadyside Presbyterian Church in Pittsburgh. Ministers of the church are the Reverend Dr. Howard C. Scharfe, the Reverend Dr. James R. Spear, and the Reverend J. Wayne Hanratty. Organist and choir director Russell G. Wickman. Today's sermon by Dr. Scharfe was titled, "One Must Expect That." Your comments on these services are invited. Listen next Sunday at 11 o'clock for the regular worship service from Shadyside Presbyterian Church, Amberson Avenue on Westminster Place in Pittsburgh. Listeners are invited to send contributions to the radio ministry and benevolences of the Shadyside Presbyterian Church.